Okay.
Hello, everyone. So I'm so excited to bring today a beautiful soul. I just fell in love with her energy the moment that I saw her post in one of the groups that we belong to. And her name is Bonnie. She is honestly like I really tap into her energy, and I was like, oh my God, someone that finally understands what I'm trying to say. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Oh my goodness, I love that. Yes, so hi. It's such a pleasure to be here, Victoria. Thank you so much. Such an honor. Thanks for holding these kinds of spaces where we come together and talk about really important things that are going on in our world. I my name is I go by Bonnie Divina Ma, and I work with an energy that I know as the Divine Mother frequency. Um, and that looks a lot different just depending on, what phase I'm at in my life. Um, and that's something that's grown a lot as I've um, been doing this work and working with Divine Mother energy. And so, as you know, some of the ways that I work with with the Divine Mother Spirit, are through some of the plant medicines. So, I have a lot of experience working with plant medicines. I also work as an uh, entheogen integration specialist, which means that I help people before and after their ceremonies as well. As we've already said, that's where the magic happens. This is really super important times in between ceremonies. And I do various intuitive healing. I work through Zoom, I work in person with people. It's a culmination of everything that uh, all the journey that I've taken over the last 20 years or so, just picking up different tools and modalities, and blending it into this unique thing that essentially, I would say, helps people find their own inner healer. I like to tap people into their inner healer, into their inner shaman. It's not just me um, doing the work for people. I want to invite everyone into the experience, and we do the work together. Um,
That's
oh
beautiful.
yeah, yeah. I could go on. It's such a broad thing about a lot of the things that I do. Perhaps more will just come out as we start to talk.
Sure, sure. I love how you say divine mother frequency. That has such an impact and like wow, I'm like that is crazy. I never like when I experience her energy, her vibration and all the healing, right? It feels very motherly and I have a spirit that I work with that reminds me of that
Hmm.
energy. So when you put it together like that, I was like, wow, it's one and the same. Like I just had a
Yes.
like an aha moment right now when you
Aha.
yes.
Yes.
So
Yes. Beautiful. Jaima, as we would say, in India, Jaima. Yeah. And so that is, I would say, my personal work has been to clear out all of the clutter, all of the ego identities, unwire all of the old programming, dismantle all the belief systems, all of the things that create the interference, so that keeps me more in separation. So it's
right,
that beautiful blossoming all the time of, as to open up and just be a vessel for that energy to move and sing and speak and receive, even, of
right.
course.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the main reasons why I was so attracted to your energy is because for the last few years I've been coming across something that for a little while I was feeling a little off, like a little like am I the only one that is seeing this or feeling this or trying to understand this? And it's something that I know a lot of people probably don't want to talk about it when we talk about sacred plant medicine. But I think it's so important because it comes with the idea also that we have to be very intentional who we drink with, and really, who do we allow ourselves to connect to when we go into those ceremonies, right? Those are sacred ceremonies where our energy is getting entangled. Can you talk to us more about that?
Yeah, well, you've said it so beautifully already. I love the that you brought in the word entanglement, which we know is one of those universal laws, those quantum
Right,
laws, that we're all entangled. And absolutely, we can be drawn into spaces that ultimately may create more trauma for ourselves, that that may bring us into like a darker, heavier energy, vibration. Um, we can, we can move into spaces where it doesn't feel safe and we don't listen to that. So when we're talking about, what we're really talking about is safe space, safe
right.
containers. And so discernment needs to come in, and we're speaking specifically, we know right now, to like ceremonies and medicine ceremonies. It applies, of course, to many things. And because medicine ceremonies are becoming such a thing now, and we have a lot more people calling themselves shamans and healers and medicine people, and there's even practitioner programs and things like this where you can learn to be a shaman in 5 days and
Oh my God.
serve medicine,
This really happens? Like this really
Absolutely, this is
happens?
happening.
Wow. I am
In
in
the
awe.
West, we love certifications, right? You can become a certified anything. So, for example, when I started doing integration work years ago, I didn't even we didn't even really call it integration. Or I guess some people were, but I wasn't really tapped in. I was just calling it continuing the conversation with the medicine,
Beautiful.
right? And but really, that's what integration is.
Right.
Um, so I know, yeah, I'm kind of going all over the place at the minute, but I'll bring it back around to the safe container and coming into the place of discernment and intuition, where when we choose to go into ceremony, we are assured that it's going to be a safe place where we're going to heal and not create more harm or not take on more harm.
Absolutely. That's what we hope for. Does that really happen all the time? I guess is my question, because I have experienced myself with people that are not quote unquote, very well trained, and believing that because I come with a pure heart that it's okay. And understanding the energy working, working with energy really opened my eyes to like what really is happening. Like you said, a lot of people are doing this with a lot of experience, and
Mhm.
then people have energetic shots after
Yes,
for months sometimes, and they have no idea why.
absolutely. And so there's so much that goes into that, which is why it's nice if you're new to ceremonies, or even if you've been going to ceremonies for a while, but you haven't really explored what it means to have safe ceremony or explored integration. Um, it's really important to start asking a lot of questions, and uh, and I would say being a really uh, being really assured that this is the right thing to move into the ceremony. And sometimes that can be a deliberation for many months or many years. People are feeling called to ceremony, and all of a sudden it's there, and it's like, this is the right one. I know it. And sometimes, like it happened for me, it was kind of fast, but it was also really divinely timed, that
Beautiful.
I just happened to be in this beautiful heart opening place in the desert, and I met this person who asked me for my address. This was back in the day when we didn't have so much Facebook, and we didn't certainly didn't advertise ceremonies on the internet. And I got a letter in the mail a little while later inviting me to this ceremony, and I had to follow this whole dieta,
Yeah.
and I just felt like, okay, I don't even really know what this is, but I know that this is perfect. And so I followed the dieta, and I talked to some friends, and I prepared myself mentally and physically and spiritually, and I had a really amazing ceremony. So that was totally guided. So it can sometimes happen, and then sometimes it's many years in the making. So I would say there's no hard and fast rule to, like, how do you know it's going to be the right ceremony for you? But there's definitely certain questions that in time we want to start asking. Many, many questions about the ceremonies, about the people serving, the size of the ceremonies. There's so many different factors that can go into um, creating a container that's not safe.
So can you talk to us more about when you mentioned the number of people, why is that
Mm.
important?
Well, for one, as you know, when we get too many energies in the space, and people, especially if they have not cleared, right? They haven't done
Right.
their due diligence, they haven't done their dieta, uh, which is, for those who might not understand that, that's for, say, if we're going into ayahuasca, we do a 2 weeks minimum cleansing of the body. Um, so we're very clear, as clear as we can be by the time we get into the ceremony space. Um, one, I would say one of the dangers that's more present now is the ceremonies that are taking place by people just finding them on the internet, and you hear about it on the internet, and then you go to the space, and there's nobody really been screened. There's nobody who really knows anybody or how people are connected. People are coming with a lot of dark energies. They haven't cleared themselves properly. Uh, now we're talking about size. Like, well, I don't know. 5 people might be too much in that space, right? If it's people who are coming with a lot of icky stuff. I've
Right.
sat in I've sat in ceremonies with up to, I would say, probably 30 people would be the max. And that was an Aya ceremony. And one of, uh, that was two shamans who are extraordinary space holders, extraordinary space holders, right? They really they can really deal with all the energies in this space. They know how to work with the grid. They can be with every energy at the same time, understanding what's
Right.
going on in the space, right? They know they can call in their other plant allies, the animal allies,
Right.
right? They're really holding that space. So even when there's all this stuff coming out, nobody is getting affected
Right.
by it, right? Then we have other people who pour medicine who just don't even understand that. Perhaps they don't even speak in those terms. Perhaps they went, to Peru and spent a couple weeks there and decided that they were ready to start pouring ayahuasca, and
Right.
came back and started holding medicine ceremonies, which happens all the time. It's just like not an uncommon story. Now, I'm not going to go to that person's ceremony. I would not trust that they know how to hold a space, even for two people. Uh, it's just, for me, that would feel dangerous, right? So there is this, we'll say, if you have a shaman who's really, really good and really knows how to hold a space, my personal preference would be no more than 30 And that's in a really, really held container, like with a lot of people who've already been working with the medicine a long time,
Right.
right? And it's not 30 newbies who are gonna all
All over the
just start
place.
to, right, just start to dissolve, you know. Um, I've sat in ceremonies with as little as, 2 people or 4 people. That's also can be like so super, super sweet and super powerful. Um, and we have ceremonies, in some centers now that reportedly have, up to 100 people or more at a time.
Right, right. That I have heard, and it's shocking because my goodness, that's a lot of energy right there.
It's a lot of energy. It's also a lot of people who are new to medicine who's generally going to these centers. And sometimes they're even in different rooms. And they may have experienced helpers, but it's my experience after speaking with people who found themselves in these situations, working for one of these centers, and they've got 100 people coming to ceremony, and they go through their whole ego process, and then they come out the other side going, no, that's just not safe. It's not a safe space,
Wow.
right? And perhaps the majority of the people have a good experience, right? And at least if anything, maybe they don't have a negative experience, right? But then we will inevitably have those that have a very traumatic experience.
Yeah, and I mean, even if it's only one person that has that traumatic experience, we want to. How do we tell someone that went through that to try it again with the right practitioner to
Yeah,
that treats the medicine as sacred in order for them to be able to experience the healing that they're going there for?
sure. Yeah, and that's really that process of integration that we call it now, where we begin to heal outside of the medicine space, knowing that the medicine is still working in us.
Right,
Medicine's always working, right? So we can tap back into that space outside of ceremony, where we then begin to unpack that and do the healing. And then perhaps there's a time when one feels safe and ready, and now has found, that beautiful sacred container with that's very, very safe, and where that person can be really held and nurtured.
right, right.
And I
So
know for me, like, I want to go be held and nurtured in a ceremony. I don't want to be one of like 100 people just,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? If we're gonna go deep, now if I'm in Brazil with Yawanawa, or the Hunikuan or something like that, and they get together as a village, and they've been drinking this way since they were children, and all of the families grow up drinking ayahuasca together, all of the tribe, the daime,
Mhm.
that's a different thing.
Right, right. And you have traveled a lot. Have you noticed? I have another question for you. Have you noticed with sacred medicine, what is I always wonder, and I have an issue with the way I work energy with touching, and
Mm,
how I understand that touching during the medicine is very complicated based on what
mhm.
I have experienced and what I know.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if that's the same for other experienced practitioner. Are you
Hmm.
finding the same things or no?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, so I find that touching can be really helpful. It's all in what feels, I would say, first of all, safe,
Right.
right? Um, and is it guided? Is it guided? And those are the questions I think as practitioners we have to ask ourselves.
Mhm.
And so, for example, one of my teachers would say, if I'm going to pick up a rattle or something, how much of that is Bonnie and how much of that is the medicine?
Right.
How much of that is my ego picking up that rattle? And how much of that is the medicine picking up the rattle and moving, right? That energy
Right.
and that sound. And I feel it's the same with touch. Um, and we have to also be really careful these days. We have to be trauma informed. Some people may perceive that as a very frightening thing, right? If they're going through a certain type of trauma, so we have to be ever so careful. But I do know people that have had really profound experiences from touch, and then of course we know there's the opposite that happens where touch is completely inappropriate, and right, and there's that whole end of the spectrum. So maybe there's some that just might make one feel uncomfortable or take you out of the journey, and then there's the touch that actually is doing more harm,
Right.
which
Well, the reason why I ask is because I know, um, for the type of healing that I have done, I haven't have the need to touch anyone in order to accomplish the healing. But I also
hmm
know that there are some shamans that love to go,
yeah,
and I'm the type of person that whoever I'm drinking with, they know there is no
yeah,
touch. You don't get near me because I'm in my own space and I might be going through something and doing my own thing. So I don't need that
yes,
support. But for those people that
yes,
are no experience and they're just going for it and they receive the touch, I always wonder, and especially when it's in the back of the neck or something that is a major gateway, I'm like, why do that? First of all, these might be new shamans that are 5 years in the
yeah,
making, and I have talked to old shamans, very old shamans, that are like, I don't need to go there and touch
hmm
someone because I can do it
yeah,
from where I am, which is what I
exactly,
experience myself. But I always
yes.
wonder, how are other people reacting to this, and when do they know really that person needs to be touched?
Yeah, I would say that's been a journey for me as well. And certainly as we begin to get to a certain level, we'll say, absolutely, we can sort of like move that from across the room, right?
Hmm.
Blow some apacho. Simply go sit by somebody, right?
Right.
Just sit by them. Yeah. And I would say that that's generally my approach, is more of a hands off, of course, unless if somebody is endangering themselves in
Right.
some way. And then I've actually had people ask me, can I have a hug? I
Of
really need a
course. Yeah.
hug.
Hmm.
My belly really hurts. I need someone to touch my belly,
Right.
right? So there's that invitation. And
Right.
like you said, um, there's boundaries, right? So if you've made your boundaries really clear, which I think is important for people to think about, right? Going into ceremony, what are my boundaries? What am I comfortable with?
Right.
Um, and so that's one of the things that I talk about when we're bringing, say, like a patient bill of right or participant bill of rights. Like you have a right to autonomy. You have a right to say whether or not you are to be touched. All of these
Hmm.
kinds of things. And from my ethical in my code of ethics, I of course am honoring that autonomy, right, and honoring that boundary or whatever it may be. So it's important that we know these things about people too, right? And not everybody knows to say, I don't I don't want to be touched. Like just give me my give me my
I
space,
don't I
you
don't think there
know?
are many people like that except for the weird
Yeah.
ones like me.
Yeah. I I would say I probably don't like to be touched either. And the I would say as a general rule, that's not always the case, but I would say in general, if I'm really deep in my process and I'm holding my space really, really well, like yeah, just let me do it, like let me
Right.
do my process. And then I've had say towards like more the end of ceremonies where I have held hands with my beloved at the time, and have sort of like meshed into each other in that way of hugging or hugging others, sort of at the end, and that kind of touch that's happening, I think can be really beautiful and really healing. But as we know in most ceremonies, it's like there's a no touching rule in general, right? We don't touch each other. We we try to minimize the touching, right? It's not a touching space so
Right.
much.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I noticed that you talked about with the divine energies of the female and masculine within us, can you tell us more about what is that looks like in your little,
How do I,
how do
yeah,
you see this?
how do I feel into it? So into the divine masculine and the divine feminine?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. So the way I see them is, of course, they're energies, and they're energies that come from this one source. And as we have, we move into the space of duality, we have these feminine energies or masculine energies that have these qualities to them because we're moving into the world where there's polarity. So there's
yeah,
light and there's dark and there's everything in between. There's yin and there's yang and there's everything in between. And in their, I would say, their essence, the feminine energy is that aspect that is more allowing, more receiving, nurturing. Um, there's more of a water energy, like a go with the flow kind
yeah.
of energy. A lot of times when we're talking about the feminine, it's that yin space, it's the dark womb, it's the void. uh and then we also have that that young feminine or the fierce feminine, right? Which like in nature would be like the hurricanes, the tsunamis and all of these kinds of things. So we have that aspect of divine mother as well, divine feminine. And then in the masculine, that's more of like the energy that's holding that sacred container, um, that is meeting the intuition with the doing part of things, moving through things, asserting, um, penetrative, more energy, more of a penetrative energy versus a receptive energy. It's that yang
Mm-hmm.
energy. Um, and I associate them also with, certain types of the body. So, like the left side being more of that feminine energy, which connects into the right brain, and vice versa. Um, I see that, a lot of the spirit coming through form in our world, like definitely the mother is here in the form of Earth herself. The masculine is here in the sun a lot, in the fire. I could go on, but that starts to give you a general idea,
Yeah.
yeah?
I'm wondering, like, because I know a lot of people, when they think of like soulmate, twin flame, they're looking for something outside of them. And I think
Mm.
for most of us, especially that are here on this new earth, it's within us. It's always been within us. But how do we help others understand that it's not
Mm.
outside of us? It's something that is within us and needs to be awakened fully within us in order for us.
Yes, and balanced,
Right.
right? And
Right.
balanced, absolutely. So, yeah, and that's, a lot of the work that we're doing in the world now, holding space. If we're doing like intuitive work, a healing work with others, we're looking into those energies, how we're containing them and how we're balancing them. And we know that we've been in a very masculine dominated
Yeah.
part of existence, human existence right now. Uh, we have the masculine that's been holding this container for a long time, but in a not balanced way, not allowing for the feminine,
Exactly.
right? Um, so we also speak a lot about now the rise of the feminine and how she's coming back, and she's coming back in the form of plant medicines, especially Mother Aya. She's just like creeping her way all the way, around wrapping her beautiful arms or all the way around the world. Um, so we can, like for me, healing the divine feminine within, a lot of that has been with Mother Aya.
Beautiful.
And then when we're talking about healing the masculine, perhaps it's a more masculine plant like Wachuma or peyote. Rapé, right? These are some tobacco. There's so
Yeah.
many beautiful masculine medicines as well. So that's just one of the ways that we can start to balance this out because we want to really be able to hold both of these energies equally. We want them, and that means they both need to be healed. And as we heal one, we heal the other. And then eventually we're wanting to merge, we're wanting to come into that divine union. That's like that cobra snakes and the kundalini rising, right? And everything begins to merge and kind of move back into this oneness. And so that's kind of the space that we want to be able to perhaps attain in this lifetime, where we can have such an incredible balance that they just merge together. Um, and that's this beautiful inner work of we might call it like the lover and the beloved. And we have the lover and the beloved within us, right? And we're working to love ourselves by loving, having our divine masculine love our divine feminine, our divine feminine loving our divine masculine, and seeing each other.
Right. So
Yeah.
how do people do this after medicine? Like how do they do this after they finish a session with you, or I don't know, every day, right? Like shouldn't we
Yeah.
be doing this every day?
Well, I think we need to be trying as much as we can, right? And I don't know, I'm also perhaps not an everyday person for a lot of things, but I will go through periods where I kind of speed it up, and I make it something of focus,
Hmm.
and then I perhaps integrate that for a little while. Um, so there's so many ways that we can be doing a little bit every day. um, and it might be something as simple as some easy breath work,
Right.
just breathing through the left side of the nostril for 1 minute and breathing through the right side of the nostril for 1 minute. Like super easy practice to begin to balance some of those energies, uh, and to awaken
Right.
those
Yeah.
energies.
So what I was saying in my mind, which I didn't say out loud, is I know a lot of people want to do medicine often, very often, and I do
Uh-huh.
have a problem with that. So that's why I think integration is where really
Yes.
the magic is, right? In between those ceremonies, in
Yes.
between the time that we go and meet up again with the different energies that we're looking for when we go through ceremony, right? So how do I integrate every day? How do I make the magic happen every day? And so by the time that I get to the next ceremony, whether it is 3 or 4 months or once a year,
Hmm.
then I experience that second or the third awakening, or
Yes.
those moments when we feel like I came because there was something major that I needed to do that I couldn't do in a regular meditation or something
Hmm.
like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways, and sometimes we need to carve out the space, where we just set that time aside, which is why a lot of people end up coming to someone like me, right? Where we're setting aside, we're carving out that space, uh, for 90 minutes to practice some exercises, gather some tools, talk about what's happening, because there's many things that we need to be doing, right? Uh, One is to give our bodies, say, like right after their ceremony, a lot of rest and a lot of grounding, because that's the time that we're doing some serious rewiring.
Right.
So we want to be doing things like spending a lot of time in nature or spending time in quiet. I call it the serpent phase. It's when we're shedding a lot of the skins. There's a lot of stuff coming off. So
Yes.
grounding foods and teas and being really gentle with yourself and quiet with yourself, right?
And I think
Uh,
that's the divine masculine, feminine there, being kind.
Absolutely.
We have to be
Yes,
kind.
gentle. Hmm.
Learning to be kind with ourselves is probably one of the hardest things because we
Yeah.
want to be on the go, 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 do, do, do.
Yeah, if
It's
we're
hard
going to
for us.
ceremony and then we're hopping right back into work, like
Wow.
that next week, it's very difficult to integrate that experience. So it's kind of like this stunted, because the ceremony will only be sort of in effect for so long, and then actually people can become much worse. They can have like suicide after ayahuasca ceremonies. All of these kinds of things are very real things that
Is
happen.
that what
People
you're
get more
finding?
depressed. Yeah, people get more depressed after ceremony because they don't have the support
Right.
to integrate what happened or what they experienced in the ceremony. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you had to have a bad thing happen or a trauma. It could mean that your experience was really, really great, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're still processing, you're still shedding a lot, you're still rewiring. So coming into the noticing and acknowledging that as you're moving through your everyday, is absolutely how we allow for some of that magic to keep taking place. Some of the main exercises that I do with people when they're coming, would be simple breath work, exhaling.
Yeah.
That's one thing. I mean, it's every day for everybody, but especially in integration, the exhale turns on that part of the nervous system that says relax,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now it's time to heal. Now it's time to rewire some old programming. Now it's time to rejuvenate, right? We can't do that when we're holding our breath
Yeah.
and doing a lot. We can only do that in the space when we're like in the exhale and in the letting go. So I always bring people into that space. Uh, some people are really good at getting there on their own, but others need practice. And so
Yeah.
you come to say a session so we can start practicing those things so you can implement them outside of ceremony and they start to become more second nature. So I do a lot of different things with people, just really general things, that I would do in all of my sessions, like clearing out through the voice, through the throat center, moving through sound, doing some things for the body, just to
Wow.
shake and move things, and then we can start to continue that conversation with the medicine. So, for example, like with somebody um, who is a- after a ceremony, say after an ayahuasca ceremony, um, we can go into that space where we start to kind of reconnect with the ceremony and
Mm-hmm.
start to go into some of the remembrance of the ceremony, the feelings of the ceremony. Um, because the one of the things that we need to do as we're getting more into our feminine and we're healing that and balancing that is to come also into the feelings.
Yeah.
So we want to carve out a space where we can feel the feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and all of the feelings that may have been coming up in ceremony. We want to continue to stay with those feelings for a little while. um, for some people, there's some really, I would say for most of us, there's some really deep, deep stuff that's coming up, right?
Yeah.
Like my second ceremony of ayahuasca, I went through a complete rebirth with my mother. I went through the whole thing, but we'd had a big birth trauma, uh, and I was cut out of her. So in my in journey, ayahuasca journey, I
Wow.
had a beautiful birth, right? She was able to hold me and be conscious, and and we were able to have that bonding. And so that in and of itself, of course, is deeply healing.
Right.
And had I done perhaps the integration work, which I didn't know about integration then, my second ceremony, but if I had done some integration work at that time, I might have been able to go into that a little bit deeper, right? To now understand like there's healing that needs to happen with mother, right? Not just my mother, but with perhaps mother in general,
Wow.
and that ceremony and experience was the portal and the invitation to connect more deeply into that womb space, perhaps something like that. uh, People, remember, have traumas, so then we want to be able to safely go into those places and basically rewrite that story, right? Or learn what's there. People remember traumas that they never remembered until they're 40 years old, and all of a
Right.
sudden they go to ayahuasca ceremony and they remember, oh my gosh, I was molested by my father. Happens all the time.
Yeah, it
Then
does.
we have to discern, did it really happen? Because there's sometimes it doesn't. I would
Hmm.
say most of the time it is a remembrance, but sometimes it's something
It could
else
be,
maybe.
yeah, it could be from
So
past life.
right. So there's a lot of support that's needed. And we'll say, like, uh, somebody like a general therapist might be able to help to a certain extent, but since they don't understand the medicine, perhaps, and understand how this is still the medicine working,
Yeah.
even now. So someone like a integration therapist, we can bring in the medicine into that journey, and
Right.
as the medicine, as the orchestrator and the healer and the spirit working
Hmm.
through, right? And so we bring the awareness, and we bring it through that lens as well. So we're always connecting to the medicine as we're integrating, we're understanding the medicine. We have a relationship with the medicine now. The medicine is in us. It's in us forever. She's been awakened in us.
Right, exactly. And you know, Bonnie, when you're talking, the only thing that I keep thinking is like, well, first of all, when I started drinking medicine, I didn't know either about really integration. Like, my integration was like an hour after when we got together and we talked about it,
You
and
had your
you
share
know,
circle. Yeah.
right, and that's it. But I keep wondering, like, wouldn't this be so cool for, and you know, I know a lot of people that went with me, that participated in my first weekend ceremony, and a lot of those people had to save money to go for the retreat, for the medicine. How will they have money to also pay for integration services and really benefit from the whole experience? Like, what is the other choice if they don't have those resources?
Ah, well, yeah, that's a really good point as well. I do know some people that will offer online ceremonies, or that are free for people to come to be able to have some sort of support. Um, I've known some people also that are doing them in person, and I think that's a really good thing, and it's probably up to all of us to be able to step into that a little bit and to hold those spaces for people. I
Hmm.
do have some good friends that hold those kinds of spaces on like Clubhouse, and I've been a part of many of those spaces where people can come, and perhaps we even have some different um, topics, right? Like sexual abuse,
Right,
and in the ceremony space, right? So people can come, and be able to share and make some connections and start getting some support. And I would say, for someone like me, like if I have somebody who's coming and they really want to do the work, they
hmm,
really, really want to dedicate themselves to the work, uh, I'll personally do anything to work with somebody who is in need, payment plans, IOUs, all of those kinds of things. And I think it's important that anyone who's doing this kind of work be able to offer at least a little bit in that way. And that's one way that we can give back, right? And give
right,
back to the medicine,
yes,
is by holding the space perhaps for people that don't have the financial capability that others might.
right, right.
Yeah,
And did you just mention sexual abuse in ceremony?
I
Is that
sure
what you said?
did.
Like what?
Oh yeah. Well, that's absolutely a real thing. That's why I was saying when I was talking about touching, because certainly there's inappropriate touch that does happen in ceremony, or immediately after ceremony, or in the coming days after ceremony, even still not appropriate. Um,
This is insane. Let me tell you, I had a vision, and it came with like a major download, and this was a few years back, and I was being shown. how people that are over drinking the medicine to the point where they cannot hold it together in place, they become a little psychotic, and therefore that's why they
Hmm.
start doing these sexual abusive situations in ceremony or after. I don't know if this is the same thing that you're talking about, but you just blew my mind away right now.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that there's many perhaps reasons why this is happening at such an alarming rate, which it most certainly is. Um, it's to the point where, say, like one of my teachers, I heard him say one time, Alberto Viodo, he was saying that he feels that women should be the only ones serving medicine now.
Wow.
And part of the reason is because there's
Wow.
so much stuff going on, and we don't want to point out our brothers to say, "Oh,
Of
terrible
course.
man," right? But just to
Right.
say, this is just what is, right? It's mostly women who are being traumatized in these spaces, and it's
Right.
mostly males, male shamans who are doing this, uh, that we know of, anyways. Those are the facts that we have. Um,
Wow, I am getting goosebumps, and the reason why is because I do know someone that he's a male, and he was sexually abused
uh,
by a male
mhm,
in ceremony, and
uh-huh.
there is so much happening on my side, so much information coming through, and the fact that you mentioned women doing ceremony is like it took me back to like ancient times where the women's were the main real priestesses that were in charge and responsible for the
Absolutely.
sacredness of providing this to the community, right, through
Yes.
herself.
Yes. Yeah. You know, um, back to, just in general, what causes people to do these kinds of things, to harm or traumatize another, to take advantage of someone. We call it like abuse of power.
Yeah.
Um, One interesting thing to point out is that often these people might have believed themselves into that they're actually doing something good.
Right.
It's not
Right.
that they think they're doing anything bad. They really think, oh, and so that's why we tell uh people, like, there are some red flags, right? Like, if a shaman ever says to you something like, you need some extra special healing, come back to my
Mm.
room after the ceremony, uh and I'm gonna, you need some, and that's when, say, one way that this something like that might happen. um there's there's even things that carry into the following days, right? Even weeks after ceremony. Shamans who might approach someone to say something like, you're really special. I think you're kind of probably going to be a medicine person, or a great healer. I
Right.
want you to, come, and perhaps that might be actually, real for some people, that's a safe situation, and that's actually what's happening. But I would say it's also a red flag, and
Yeah.
there are many, I know many women, I'll just say, and that have fallen under this. I call it the shaman spell,
My goodness.
right? The shaman spell.
That makes
uh
sense, that why you coining that
yeah.
concept, because it
Yeah.
really is like a spell. In medicine, everybody's like my brother, my sister,
Hmm.
but they're
Yeah.
still under the medicine where everything is unity and everything is like
Hmm.
it's supposed to be life and love. And those
Yes.
that don't understand get, fall in the trap.
Yes, exactly. And so if we are perhaps finding ourselves like looking at the shaman like, whoa, or
Mhm.
believing that like there's some special relationship, or we've got some love happening or something like that.
Right.
Not to say that it can't happen, uh, but we've got to really start to look in and go like, is this real?
Right.
What's going on in here? Because there can be this sort of like black magic thing that's happening also,
Mhm.
where we're feeling really pulled
Yeah.
to that person. And it can be very unconscious on the part of the shaman.
Sometimes
I've
I think so. I mean,
absolutely.
that was the vision that I had, and then the major aha moment and how everything came. I was like I was mind blown. Like, these people are really sick. Some of these people are very sick. They're not doing it on purpose, but it's
Yeah,
happening nevertheless.
it's happening.
And now somebody's traumatized that went for healing, and now it's worse.
Yes. Yeah. And like I said, it's not a rare thing, it's a common thing.
Wow, I just
It's
didn't
a
know it
common
was that
thing.
common because I'm not in
Yeah.
those circles, right? Compared to you, that you're doing this often.
Yeah. Yeah. So and I also of course receive people, right, who are have experienced different
Right.
kinds of traumas. And yeah, absolutely, these are some things that I've kind of witnessed firsthand in a sense, so I know how real it is. And I would say, like, to anyone on the medicine path, like, a lot of what we learn is what not to do, right? So often we are exposed to things, and it might even take us a while to understand what's going on, but it's that process of learning what not to do. Um, and unfortunately, we learn that by witnessing things that can be really harmful and traumatic to others.
Right.
Um, so, most I've worked with some people now who actually have like rules about that, right? Which I think is a really good thing. Like, so, you know, if you do find yourself really attracted to someone, and they're attracted, feel this thing, 60 days, then you need to have 60 days before you begin to even entertain,
Right.
right?
So there
This
have to
this
be
idea.
rules because
Hmm?
there are rules because this is really happening. Like,
It's really
you
happening.
tell me, but I'm still not
Yeah.
processing that this is
Yeah.
really, really,
Yeah.
really happening.
Yeah. And so, for example, like, I um had to speak with a brother once who uh, didn't understand that ceremony continues after the ceremony is closed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just because we close the circle doesn't mean ceremony is over,
Right.
right? So it might be this there's been this thing that I've heard several times now, like, well, ceremony was over. Like, no, no, no. We know very well that we are in that vibration of the medicine for a
Mm.
long time, and especially within the first 72 hours, there's a lot rewiring, a lot transforming. We're still very much in ceremony, medicine's still very much working. It's
Absolutely.
not the appropriate time uh, for any person holding a space to be um, to be broaching on some sort of like sexual or romantic relationship. We're too vulnerable, especially those of us who are new to medicine. We're too vulnerable in that space. And this is another thing, right? All of a sudden, like, somebody fell in love with the shaman, and they go home, and they divorce their husband or their wife, and they leave their kids, and they run off to the jungle or whatever it may be, and those situations don't ever seem to work out really well.
Yeah, this
um
is crazy, but it's good that you pointed that out because it also brings us to the moment where people are coming back from ceremony and they want to change their jobs and move out
mhm
and go to the land and make very drastic
mhm
decisions. What have you found with some of your clients during integration?
oh yeah. Well, we're on the same wavelength as we're going that way, because I was gonna say, like, that's what we're talking about, is that what we call the afterglow.
Yeah,
Right, the afterglow of the medicine. Everything is beautiful. I'm so expansive. I'm at one with the universe. Everything is going to be amazing from here on out.
yeah,
And I've had this grand epiphany, and I'm going to go home, and I'm going to quit that job, and I'm leave that partner. And I have these conversations with my teacher. And so it's a caution, because, of course, it might actually be the right time for you to go quit that job. And that ceremony was the catalyst that was like, it's done. I'm quitting that job, but then there's a lot of people that kind of rush into those things without being really grounded in that decision,
Mm-hmm.
and there's perhaps some fallout, after that.
Right. So what, like, I just, I mean, I know that one time I came back from ceremony to that, I think that was 2019, and I was like, I mean, like, everything is perfect, everything is perfect. And then I had a business partner that really, we got into an argument. And I remember telling him, you just took me out of my ceremony.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I was so upset with him that day for, like, I don't know, for at least 2, 3 hours. But I
Uh-huh.
remember feeling like I was actually pulled out of, like, fully, like, really feeling this
Yes.
pull. Like I was
Because it's
completely
a because you're vibrating at a certain
right.
frequency. You're still what I call, like, when we experience that, when we've experienced, the cosmic void or spirit or our higher soul self or any of those things, when we're there, we're
Really
at
hot.
this frequency, right? And
Yeah.
just it's all just a flow, and it's all so good, and like the light of my higher self and my body, and then all of a sudden it's like the needle on the record,
Yeah.
it's like, and then somebody says something or does something, all of a sudden it's like, and you're
Uh-huh.
like jarred out of
Right.
this place into this other lower vibrational frequency. And so, okay, now here we go, right? Now here's some of the work that's starting to happen. Here's the integration,
Right.
right? Because how do we bring back that beautiful, equanimous, blissful, pure light soul self into this 3D realm, into this body, into this time space dimension, and continue to just, we'll say, bring ceremony into every moment, right? Doesn't always happen. Of course, it doesn't always happen.
Didn't happen for
Uh,
me.
so then okay, well then that's something for us to look at,
Right.
right? Here, oh, it's here, no, it's here, and then it was this thing, and it like
Mm-hmm.
jarred me out of it, and so then that's something, right, to start to unpack. That's something that's probably a trigger. It's pointing to
Of
something,
course.
right? That, okay, here's the deeper healing, here's the next layer of that story or whatever it may be. So
Right.
that's what integration is about.
Right. Let me ask you something now that you're talking about this trigger. And I know you mentioned before, when people go for medicine, sometimes something beautiful happens, sometimes nothing happens. But then we come back and, like you say, we have those thoughts where we don't really want to be here, where we don't know what's going on. We don't even know sometimes what's wrong. And we just know something is not working out.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help someone that is going through this process of, I don't even know what to call it, because it's like you go to medicine, you're seeking healing, sometimes you get nothing, but you still come out feeling like something is wrong, like, you know something is completely off.
Yeah. So there's many things that we can do. And of course, it all involves going into that exhale, going into that space of the healing, going into that place where we can decrease resistance, get out of our heads,
Mm.
get into our hearts, get into our bodies, perhaps call in the medicine again, and begin to unpack that. Um, I sort of lost my train of thought. So can you come back around to me with a question that feeds into that, so I can keep going with
Yeah,
that thought?
I'm thinking for the people that I know I went through this myself a few years ago when I was going through my own, doing my own medicine, and sometimes coming out of it feeling amazing, like, whoa. And then sometimes I will be like, something is completely off, because I just didn't feel like nothing is working out. Like, I know you say, and
Hmm.
this is very well known, where people go to medicine, they go to sacred plant medicine, and they come out feeling suicidal.
Right.
How do
Yeah.
you
So
help people?
we've got to look into it, right? you've got to find some help. It's not something that somebody's going to be able to do on their own. So the first thing is find somebody who can help you, right? And like we've said, if the finances are there, find the person who can help you in some way, because we've got to be able to understand, like, did you pick up a dark energy, right? Some sort of entity. Is this yours, or is this something that you picked up, right? Did you go into ceremony feeling like life was pretty good, but all of a sudden you feel suicidal, or you're having like exorcism like things going through your body, or many of the different things that can happen, like, yeah, we've got to start looking into that and
Yeah.
figuring out what the heck is going on here. Or it just could be like, now you just feel so out of alignment because you experienced this, like, this, higher vibration of yourself and this possibility, and now you're like, and you're like back in regular world. It's like nothing feels aligned anymore, right?
Right.
Nothing feels aligned. And so there's a lot of work to do there, of course.
There is a lot of
Um, and so again, it's like being able to first reside with the feelings of that. What's the feelings that are coming up? Because of course, someone like Mother Aya, those medicines are going to start to kind of like push those feelings up.
work. Mm-hmm.
Right? And start everything, as I say, it's like a coming to a head, like a
Yeah.
pimple that's coming to a head. Everything starts to like come to the surface. So at the very least, uh, we've got to be able to move into that space where we can just start to feel the feelings of that. What feelings, what suppressed emotions, what stuff is now coming up and coming out, right? What is the feeling associated with being out of alignment? What is the feeling associated with nothing feels right in my life anymore, right? What is that? And then we can start to go into the space where when we feel it in the body, right? So we get out of the head and we get into the body, start to feel,
Yeah.
okay, where do I feel, what is that feeling? Oh, the feeling is fear. Where do I feel the fear? Well, I feel it in my chest, right? Then we can start moving into a space where we can breathe there. We can call on so many different things, right? We can call on, so we have so many plant allies that
Yeah.
might be able to come in. Sage, right? Um, Lavender, always such a beautiful ally. Rose, if you like rapé, right? Really
Right.
grounding, bringing in the grandfather medicine, that sort of a healing energy. Um, Allowing time for reflection, right?
Yeah.
Writing, starting to write, right? I'm dissatisfied, right? What's going on, stream of consciousness, like, let's start to do some reflection
Yeah.
and figure, and get into, like, where is the dissonance, what's the program that's been running, what are we afraid of, what do we want, and then how do we begin to move in that direction, right? And
Yeah.
so for some of us, that can be a very slow, painful process, where for others, it's like, zip, we just like zipped it, we're like, woo, I got back from ceremony, did that, bang, like, now I'm just like coasting, right? And then there's others of us who come back and we're just like, it's like, I hate my life. Everything is a mess. I don't want to live this way anymore.
Yeah.
And
I do have a question for you, and I know we're getting close to the hour or so, but I know you mentioned several times, and I didn't want to be the one to bring it out, mostly because I don't want to be negative, but I know you mentioned the dark energies
mhm.
within ceremony several
Yeah.
times. Is that something that you're finding often?
Uh, I wouldn't say for me in particular often. I am aware it's happening. Um, for example, there are a lot of practitioners, shamans, medicine people, whatever you want to call it, that have a lot of their own really super dark stuff.
Right.
And they are not healing themselves, they are not doing their own work. There are a lot of people sharing medicine who have addictions, who drink alcohol all day, who abuse pharmaceuticals, abuse even the visionary medicines. We can abuse those too, for sure.
Right.
Uh, and so, like I was talking about in my post, it might be a very well intended person, but nonetheless, if you are putting your energy into medicine and serving it to somebody else, there most absolutely can be a transfer of energy. I, know of people who've had experiences where um, they received those dark energies. They went to a ceremony thinking that they were going to feel better, and they felt a lot worse. And it's because their provider was unwell.
Yeah.
Um, so there is those practitioners who they just don't even understand that they're doing it, or they're in denial. And then there is perhaps the ones who um, may be having some some intention to cause some sort of harm, to transfer something. It's absolutely 100%, I would say, a real thing. I've spoken with all of my teachers about it. They agree that it's a very real thing that happens. I started to intuit it and experience it when I was, getting into this world and understanding certain people, and that these people were serving medicine. And I was like, why is this person serving medicine?
Right. Right. I
Like,
I know
yeah.
some people, some shamans, that have, I mean, they grew up in the Amazon and they don't believe in dark energy. So I find this duality within,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
within the sacred plant community, where some people believe, some people don't believe, and then there is this
Yeah,
conflict. If it's not there, how can so many people go through this sacred plant medicine experience and come out seeing and feeling like something is not proper,
exactly.
like something is not right?
Exactly.
um
Yeah, and I've had other friends who they're more visual, and they've actually witnessed, like a dark, shadowy energy being absorbed by a recipient. But I also understand, like, I've run across those shamans too. It'll be like, there's no such thing as like a dark energy. Oh, I went to ayahuasca ceremony and now there's like a dark entity that's shown up in my room and it's like there all night, and oh, that's not real. That's a
right,
figment of your or whatever it may be. So I know, that there's, yeah, the opinions on this. I think it all comes down to experience, right?
yeah,
Perhaps those that don't believe it never experienced it, but how could you not believe it if you experienced it, saw it,
mm,
felt it, sensed it, you know, something like that, right? So, and absolutely, whether we want to call it a dark energy or heavy density or a low vibration, right? When we are vulnerable and we're in that very vulnerable space where we perhaps don't even know how on the daily to protect ourselves, um, we are absolutely susceptible, I think, to pick up things that end up making us feel worse. I'll just
right, right.
leave it as simple as that.
Yeah, I agree. I think if everybody's going to have their own experience with this, I know what I sing and experience myself doing it for others, and also seeing things because I am a medium. And
Yeah.
it's hard. I think it's a constant battle with me because I want to believe in the love and light only, but I know there is the other side. So within me I have this major conflict, like I don't want to, but I know it's there. So it's interesting for me.
Yeah,
It's
I
always
would
good to
say
get other perspectives.
I would say, like, when we live in a world of duality, there's darkness and there's light, and there's things that are really, really super low and sludgy and super heavy density, and there are things that feel like really, really super light, and there's everything in between. Um, and so whatever we want to call it, I would say what it boils down to is, like, we know there's certain frequencies. We know that there's certain vibrations that we can be in that that kind of bring us into a state that feels really off, really painful, really sad, whatever it may be. Um, Sometimes, of course, like a ceremony, we want ceremony to open us up, right? We want us to be cracked open, and maybe afterwards we are going to feel a lot of sadness. Maybe there is going to feel a lot of like there's dark, icky stuff coming up. Certainly, like I've had I've worked with people who had like literally, dark voices and things feeling like they were being
Right.
pulled out of them. Um, and uh, and so again, it runs the whole spectrum. And I do feel that sometimes we pick things up that just aren't ours.
Right.
We're
Right.
holding on to it for someone. Maybe there was a subconscious agreement, something happened, but we took that, we held on to that for that
Hmm.
person. um, there's just
Sometimes,
so many things, yeah,
yeah.
so many
Sometimes,
ways it can happen.
right. And I think also sometimes we hold on to things that we have no idea what they are, but they become so part of us that it's almost like a baby. Oh, I'm gonna keep you forever, even though they're trying to
Yeah.
heal. And that's part of the process, understanding what needs to be let go, and what needs to be completely healed so it doesn't continue to take us. What about distant healing? I know you mentioned that on your website, and we're going to provide the
Yeah.
website in the description area. But for those that are not ready for sacred plant medicine, what are the other healing methods that you offer?
Oh, yeah. So, it's not necessary to have a plant medicine to journey.
Right.
Certainly, I do take a lot of people into that quantum space, as I know you do too, without the use of plant medicine. Um, and so the way that I generally work in a healing session, which we do just like this, through Zoom, um, is to create a sacred container just as we would normally, to call in all of the guides and the protections and all of that stuff just as we would in a ceremony type of space. And then we can move into a space that's more like, we'll say, like hypnotic,
Nice.
trance like, we're dropped really down, we're out of the space of the mind. And then again, we can begin to portal through spaces, like maybe there's some place in the body that's really calling out, like, oh, my chest feels really tight, right? We can move into that space. And it just depends, really. There's many, many different ways. Sometimes I just find myself moving my hands and moving stuff up, right? I
Wow.
know that stuff is moving because I'm moving it too. I'm burping, I'm
Wow.
blowing stuff out, right? So there's
Yeah.
definitely stuff that's moving and transforming. I'm also I'm initiated into the Andean lineage and the Sacred Valley, like the Karo people, right? And so we have like what's known as the mesa,
Oh, that's
and
beautiful.
the mesa has like the stones in it. We call the kuyas. And so sometimes I use the stones. Uh, sometimes people just drop in so fast, man. We're just going, and we're there, and we're with that wounded child perhaps, and we're calling that wounded child in. We're moving through a lot of emotions, suppressed emotions.
Mm,
One might be like a traumatized child, right? We're getting in touch, we're holding that little child as they're feeling their fear.
yeah.
And we're healing, doing a lot of healing in that space. Perhaps we might be rewriting an old contract, like burning old contracts and the fire cord cutting.
Wow.
uh, I've even been able to help people remove what we'll call dark energies through the computer, just by each of us using and holding on to a crystal. So one thing for sure, I would say that COVID has shown me more than ever before is that we don't need to be in the physical space with one another.
Right.
And I guess this goes back to the thing about touch, right? Like
Hmm.
touch is really nice, and I do therapeutic touch sessions with people where I'm doing both energetic and work on the denser energetic body, the physical body. And that's, super, super awesome also. And we can just go into the space where we release so much and we get so many new downloads,
Oh yeah.
uh, just by being in this space right here,
Yeah.
and so many of us were able to move into doing more of this work in the last couple of years. It was really by necessity, but it was also to show us like, hey, you know
Do you ever think that even though obviously COVID has been terrible for many, 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 many people, at the same time, like you say, it has moved us to this part of this understanding that we don't have to be in the same room to receive the healing, to communicate, to share
yeah,
energy. I honestly, I started sweating when you were talking about how you were burping and like
uh-huh,
sometimes you do that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sweating and some people fart and some people like
yeah,
really have to go to the bathroom real
yeah,
quickly. So we don't really have to be in the same room to receive and benefit from each other's energy.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you like seriously, I think it's just part of the plan to and I'm thinking about astral traveling and other stuff, but it's the same. Like if we can share this energy in such a powerful way, when we're ready to work on something, I seen healing done in some of the quantum healing sessions online that has blown my mind, and I'm like, wow, I didn't expect that. Completely honestly, I didn't expect that because it has been so transformative that sometimes I want to cry. I'm like, wow, I honestly, it just feels like we're in the same, sharing the same
mm,
space at that moment.
mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
Anything else you
uh,
want to share with us before we end? I know it's over the hour.
let's see. um Yeah, when, for those who are thinking about going to ceremony or for really anybody, always good to really look into it, to ask a lot of questions, to find experienced people to guide you so you make sure that it's an optimal experience. I'm available, as are many. Um, Wonderful people around the world now to assist people through these journeys. So we don't have to spend so much time going to the ceremonies. Um, we get into the magic in between the ceremony, which is really, that's the goal of any ceremony. Is we
Right.
want to bring ceremony into every moment, into every day, and we want to feel that, that beautiful expansion and trust and surrender and connection in every moment. So
Yeah, I love that.
yeah.
And do you have a blog post, or how do people normally keep up in touch with you?
So I have a website. I think you were going to put that up. That's
Yes.
www.awakenascend.com. And yeah, I have a whole like blog section on there where I blog about various things that are moving through me. I'm also pretty active, like on Facebook, like you said, in some of the Facebook groups where I post different things there than I post other places. A lot of relation to the medicine or like to the shadow side of medicine work. I actually have a podcast coming up with someone else in a couple of days where we're going to get into the specifics of
Oh, beautiful.
some of the shadow sides of ceremony, specifically the abuse of power.
Okay. So maybe you can share that link and I'll put it also on the description because I think a lot of people will be interested in this.
Okay, I will. Yeah, as soon as I get it, I'll link it to you.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. I had such an amazing time
Thank
speaking
you
with you.
so much, Victoria. It's been so wonderful. Thanks for holding the space so we can have these important conversations.
Beautiful. And hopefully we can see you again soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.